What is up, everybody? So, I want to talk a little bit about just sort of character development and giving my insight into the matter of Jimmy and my adventures with Superman, and basically my thoughts on the matter and just sort of the input that I have in terms of the character development thereof or lack thereof for the Jimmy Olsen character in my adventures with Superman. Um, so basically, and spoilers for those who care. So Jimmy at the end of season one ended up becoming, uh, basically the not the richest. He basically became a multimillionaire. He did become a multimillionaire by the end of season one. And so he was positioned to have really uh, a standalone development, right? Where he could really be a multitude of things instead of sort of the token black / black friend of uh, Superman and Lois, right? And it started out, with decent promise. First few episodes, I think there was a chance that Jimmy could have been, um, really into his own and really have gotten into more of like a role where he developed maybe even like outside of the Daily Planet, where like, his whole publication company became a thing, or he like diversified his funds. So like his wealth stayed, right? They pretty much gave him the wealth at the end of season one, and almost as it reads as now, as sort of a cliffhanger in terms of like, oh, what will become, what will be of this hetero black man that uh just recently amassed this great fortune, because I think it was something like he's somewhere between single and double digit multimillionaire um, status, which the number is not necessarily important as much as the fact that he had that wealth, right? And so it sort of trended toward a lot of, um, and Jimmy was already painted as being a good friend to Clark, right? Would do anything, whatever. To Superman, whatever, would do anything. Same for Lois. Where that was already something that was pre established, right? So this was basically Jimmy's character, right? Was being that friend. So keep that in mind, right? So being effectively a token friend, right? And so he ends up still maintaining that, which isn't really development, right? Um, the one thing that it wasn't anything that was explicit, right? It's just kind of like, cool, Jimmy amassed his fortune, da 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 da, and he started using it for, um, they had him use money for um, things where he was just giving money uh, for causes with his friends, right? So basically, still keeping really just with the fact that like Jimmy is a good friend to Superman / Clark and Lois, right? Um, and so there's a trend that was like, okay, like this is all right and whatnot. And so they ended up not really developing him past that, right? Um, so I mean, he ended up. Like there's a an implicit, right, character development where it's like, okay, Jimmy has this money. He's still sharing space with Clark. He didn't go out and buy like himself a penthouse, whatever. It's like cool, yet that was an implicit thing. It wasn't an explicit thing where it was like, hey man, like this is, Jimmy decided to humble himself to not buying a penthouse because he wanted to diversify the funds or something like that, where there is a development outside of Jimmy's already, you know, token, or well, parentheses, token friendliness uh, to his, uh, to his friends with being Clark slash Superman and Lois, right? Um, and so, I believe it was episode 9. He ended up spending, um, he pretty much went bankrupt, right? He spent all his money on the fact that to help his friends, right? Literally, specifically to help Clark and Lois, right? So he's sort of like a subservient friend to these people, and he never really got his own shine throughout the season. So I mean, I even watched two episodes after the fact, right? Um, which it was like the episode with the very Gurren Lagann uh, episode tribute with Lois and Clark slash Superman's mind, and that whole like tribute, which I like the tribute. I love the tribute. The tribute, I was like, yeah, Pierce the Heavens. Like, I think anyone that's a fan of anime uh, would say like that Gurren Lagann's on there for uh, enjoyable animes to watch. So the thing is that even, after Clark and Lois have like this great moment of um, realization and like this foil of like what is home to them, how does one relate to the alienness of Clark yet his earthliness, and da 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 da, right? Like there's an explicit foil um, for both Superman and Lois, and Lois, well, Clark slash Superman and Lois like getting over um, whatever feelings that she had of like sort of inadequacy, and like you know, the dad foil and da 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 da. Right? Jimmy got none of that. I literally, I literally went through the other, excuse me. I literally went through the other two episodes after that. Nothing. Literally, they put him back effectively to square zero, like where he was uh, in season one. So he basically had no development because we didn't know anything about his income for the first season. It was just like, hey, it's Jimmy, Superman and Lois's friend, right? Slash Clark's friend, and that ended up really being the only thing that there was in season two. So the creators sort of just baited, right? Um, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with watching shows. I'm saying though that there is something wrong with shows not giving explicit character development to particularly um I would define as like positive role models of black heritage, um like Jimmy in this case in the show. So that was definitely not the best thing, I think. Um, and the ironic thing, too, that I find the need to add is that they gave like the queer or the lesbian, whatever, um, meta, right? I don't recall the name off top. Um, However, like her, and I'm not sure if her partner was supposed to be uh, someone of black heritage as well. She seemed like she's more like Latinx or something. Um, However, they end up giving her like this character development where it's like, obviously she was a baddie, and that like in terms of like she was, uh, she's antagonistic, right? In terms of the show itself. So they even gave her an explicit um, what was the word, like character development where we didn't know like her status outside of the fact of being sort of a hitman, things like that. And then you find out in this season, right, which is an explicit thing, like they never showed anything for Jimmy outside of him being Jimmy, right? And for her, they end up giving her, you know, I mean, I guess they end up giving her like the relationship development thing, which I guess you could say that was given to Jimmy. He didn't, his actual character though didn't change, right? And then it ended up really just kind of being like the same thing without it being anything new. Like he didn't get sort of like a deeper turn outside being like, hey, well that's that's the Jimmy over there, which in some sense is sort of like, I don't know. It's almost like having them just be a fixture as opposed to uh, a character, right? That can develop and can really do things. So it would have been cool, I think, to see like Jimmy's uh, like that money to actually go to use in terms of like explicitly developing um, something where like he becomes a standalone outside of like the Daily Planet and outside of uh, the Clark and Jimmy dynamic and like the Jimmy and Lois dynamic. He didn't really get that. It was kind of just more like, oh, Jimmy shows up with his money to help his friends that he would have helped without the money. So he's still just Jimmy, and all the flashiness that was tied to the money was really just to help the friends. So it wasn't really anything that was like anything deeper than that. So, and this is someone that's a person of black heritage, that it's, you know, it's across the board. Like even if you look at like folks in like what would be a good example, like Raikage, right? Like in like Naruto, if you look at the character development for the Raikage, like nothing changes. He's literally just the Raikage. Same with Killer B. Like they're literally, character wise, they're effectively the exact same um, as they started, right? So yeah, I mean, I would even say Naruto's actually a bit better than this, but I think whenever it's like an explicitly, clearly like good cut, um, character of black heritage, it seems like it's just like, need to keep you the token. If we have you like being something within the, literally within like the actual realm, like if Jimmy was on like the same level as like, I think it would have been interesting if they had like Jimmy sort of develop into being on like a similar level as like Lex, right? In the season. Like I think that would be a cool foil. Or if they had him like develop his was it like fired chick, something like that. Uh, Effectively develop his, um, his part of the publishing company that sort of like rivaled um Lex Luthor's rise, since there was that opportunity. However, it's been through and through that. It's 2 seasons now, and he hasn't developed any. Just as a note, and yeah, whereas like Clark got, effectively like a further develop in terms of like his at home world type situation, along with uh, or his being like Kryptonian, along with like Earth and the dynamic of that, along with, like the cousin, and stepping into a greater role as Superman, right? Arising over certain things where it's like Jimmy is just kind of like, yeah, like he has the same beat. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of lame. Um, Sokka's, I guess, another example, although he's not explicitly a person of color. However, I think to me he reads as a person of color, not necessarily um, an indigenous person, but I don't know. That's getting more into that. However, explicitly for Jimmy though, he literally hasn't changed for 2 seasons. So um, just something to note. And yeah, and then Lois even got her foil with like developing, becoming a greater, reporter, and then also getting like, uh, more of like, I guess, combat and things like that. Sort of that developed more so. Jimmy's still a pretty blank slate. Like, don't really have any insight into his family life or anything like that, um, as well. So, just something that's interesting. So, yeah. Oh, and I was to finish what I was saying earlier. So I was saying even um, the queer meta or the lesbian meta, whatever, specifically lesbian, right? So I just kind of I find it funny where it's like the character that Jimmy is, right, being hetero, like he can be pushed into like bringing forth more of like black excellence effectively into the scene, and developing like his own company, things like that. Yeah, they just really kept him as Jimmy, even though they had the opportunity to develop him, especially in a worldly sense, right? Because he has all this money, so he could have developed into really his own standalone force, so to speak, uh, within the world of Superman. Like he could have gotten a, like his own, again, like more of his own publishing. Like he could have gotten his own building for his publishing company. Things like that could have developed more so. And he could have taken a more prominent role, and I'd say a more elite role within the world of Superman, um, with that money, instead of it just been like, yep, well, here's Jimmy. He has money. Great. Just uses it for his friends. Whatever. Like, it's. I think it reads as lazy to a degree. So, just some insight on that. And then also, I was just saying that the queer meta, in particular, like she ended up having like her own, uh, like flat slash mansion, right? So you have like one wealthy character that's like a side character nonetheless, side character, doesn't even have a main, like Jimmy's screen time wise has way more screen time than this meta character. So it seemed like an even further snub, I think, when that happened, when it's like, bruh, you literally could have had Jimmy like had a mansion or a flat or something that just wasn't like, hey, there goes that, that that token black guy, so to speak, helping out his friends again that are Caucasian, and there's one other not as much token uh, black character, right? With the lead, uh, the chief of editing or whatever for the Daily Planet. So, or Daily Bugle, excuse me. Daily Bugle? No, Daily Bugle is Spider Man. Daily Planet is, yeah, Daily Planet is Superman. So, yeah, just my 2 cents on the matter. Just want to share that. Um, with that being said, I definitely recommend still watching episode 9 of My Adventures with Superman, because that nod to Gurren Lagann and the moment with that, I was like, oh my gosh. Um, so definitely something to check out. And yeah, writers of My Adventures with Superman, or My New Adventures with Superman, if you ever watch this, please give Jimmy some more substance. Please. 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 Okay. Um, so yeah, it's just my 2 cents, my thoughts, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And y'all take care. Peace.